a different topic. It says, I love my drink chilled. Ladies and gentlemen, to talk on this, we have a lady who is a big data analytics professional and a global business leader with operational competency defining initiatives leading to extraordinary P&L that's ahead of the business plans. Played pivotal role in building intellectual property for the company by implementing advanced digital interventions and productize analytics solutions that are designed for an end-to-end deployment for global retail and FMCG clients. Accredited for executing the most critical change management projects using Six Sigma techniques. Ladies and gentlemen, she is the VP in Genpact Analytics. Please put your hands together for Deepika Goel.
So thanks for the introduction and very interesting session, Mr. Gaurav. Um, I love the landscape that you draw on the CRM analytics actually, but CPG companies are using IoTs these days and making it really valuable and adding value to their P&L. Can we have the AV please? We'll go through a quick video and then I'll go through the presentation. Everything around you is actually connected. Your washing machine, your air condition, your desktop at the workplace, or the laptop at the workplace, your car, remote controls, everything is absolutely connected. Lights automatically turn on when you enter your room. The front door of your house automatically opens when your known family member is around, and it gets closed when an unknown person is around or a stranger is around the room. Your coffee machine starts brewing your coffee as soon as your alarm in the morning goes on. And that's the kind of virtual world that we are trying to create through IoT. Believe me, today these things may sound very finicky, but I tell you, we would have got the same impression if we would have told our parents a couple of decades ago that there would be a machine in future that would actually be consuming money and giving out money. We have ATMs today, right? So while these things do look a little far away, but they are not that far away as they think. And the way the speed at which technology is changing, I really feel that this is something going to be a near future of IoT and how we are going to use it. Let's think about what is the kind of impact that IoT is actually creating. If I say that IoT is actually making companies change their growth trajectory from a degrowing to a growing company, I would actually be lying. Because honestly speaking, companies need very simple things to do when they want to grow, get onto the growth path. But there is one interesting fact that I want to draw your attention to, which is clearly the difference between the strivers and the leaders of the industry. I'm not for a moment saying that the strivers won't grow. They would go on to the natural path, they would have their organic growth that they would want to. But given the kind of growth that the companies who are adopting IoT is going to be manifold, that's the opportunity cost that the strivers are going to pay if they do not adopt IoT. So that's the kind of loss that they would have. It's not that they won't grow. They would continue to grow. Because I personally work in some of these use cases across CPG and retail industry. But these are some of the 4 ones that are clearly creating a demarcation. And again, this is from a secondary research source, so I myself can correlate to it very confidently. Better asset utilization. One of the use cases that I'm going to talk about exactly touches upon this topic, that how companies who have adopted IoT are able to do a better asset management. And when I say asset, it is the physical asset management that they are able to do at their end and are able to drive better ROI. Supply chain optimization, business agility. Another use case that I'm going to talk about is a classic example of how your business, both the top line and the bottom line, will benefit if you are adopting IoT. Operational improvement, of course, goes without saying. Let's very quickly look at a quick adoption rate of IoT across key industries and verticals. Clearly, there are two dimensions that I've drawn this diagram on. At the bottom, we have the dollar value these industries are investing into. And on the y-axis, I have the growth rate or the ROI that these companies within these verticals have seen. The reason I've chosen retail CPG today as one of the point-in-time case studies, not because I specialize in that, but also if you look through this diagram, clearly we see that this is one industry which is obviously pretty mature in terms of the investments that CPG companies, both manufacturers as well as the retailers, are making in terms of an adoption of IoT. The growth rate or the ROI that they're able to enjoy with the help of this investment is also at a pretty mature stage. So clearly CPG and retail industry after manufacturing is second best industry or vertical that has shown maturity in terms of adoption of IoT. I work for Genpact, so I'm going to present you two live case studies here that we have personally worked on for some of our big clients in the CPG and the retail domain. Well, the first case study is from the breweries. I'm sure all of you would have had a chance to go and get into a bar and enjoy a beer of Mark. So that's why, now you will understand probably why I titled my presentation, I would like to have my drink chilled, because IoT is one case, breweries are one classic example case where they're using IoT to ensure that their customer gets drinks at the best optimal temperature. The second case study I'm going to talk about is the visi-coolers. This is coming from the CPG manufacturers, and we'll see what their problem statements were and how did we go about solving them. So this case study that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes is for one of the biggest alco-bevs giants in the Europe, and they of course have breweries across the globe. Just to give you some context around the numbers, world over, about 20% of beer is consumed out of the breweries, which is through the mugs which is being served on the go. This company actually had a very unique set of problems. So if I could summarize those problems for you: waste and theft. You must be wondering how could there be a wastage? So a lot of times the bartenders in the bars would be careless enough and they would either under pour or over pour your jug in the bar. So there was a lot of wastage. Theft, because of during the non-working hours of the operation of the breweries, the owner would not know if it is being sold or it is being stolen. The second problem, suboptimal stock. This is probably doesn't require any description of the problem, but honestly, the brewery owner did not understand that which brand is going to get out of stock faster than what I would anticipate, and hence was one of the bigger problems. Ineffective promotions. Happy hours were not happy for him. Why? Because he ended up promoting the same brand every time that would have sold even if it was not promoted. The promotion is ideally supposed to give you incremental sales from your baseline sales. So baseline sales is the sales that you would any which ways make. So if you end up promoting that brand, you're not actually doing your promotions effectively. So that was another problem. The last, certainly not the least, dissatisfied customers. Why? The kegs or the taps in the breweries were not maintained or cleaned at the requisite interval that they had to. That was problem one. Problem two was that the temperature at which the beer was served was not optimal. It was suboptimal. Either it was too chilled or it was really not, it was hot basically, if I could put it that way. So these are the four problems that they had come up with. What we did was that we installed sensors in the kegs or the taps through which, each of the taps through which your beers would flow. As a result, what we were getting is that a huge collection of real-time data from every keg which was telling us not just what brand is being sold, at what volume, at what pace, at what price, and so on and so forth. So imagine if you have this kind of data, what you could really do with it and how you could drive value to your clients. I would quickly touch upon the impacts that we were able to create. We could actually shrink their beer wastage by 50%. Supply chain, because we knew that which brand is getting consumed real time, because the sensor is get installed in the keg and each keg is dedicated to a particular beer brand. We knew that which of the brands is getting consumed at a faster pace and hence is likely to run out of stock. So we could hence reduce their out of stock situations with this insight by 60%. Real time. So one of the things, very effective use of IoT data. I'll be very honest with you because I've worked on these case study. I can tell you this upfront. We didn't do any high-end predictive analytics, honestly speaking. The beauty of doing analytics on IoT data is to be real time, right? So when you get this real time data, what we could do is we could send alerts and notifications to the bartender or to the owner that this is a brand which is not selling. So if you want to push this brand, this is the promotion that you can go. So real time promotion, help them do promotion effectively by 30%. Quality analytics, not to mention that we could go back to the bartender with the data saying that your temperature is suboptimal, it's not being served at the temperature that it should be. So therefore the customer satisfaction scores went up significantly. The other case study that I want to touch upon, interestingly, is from one of the Indian big CPG manufacturers, and this is not Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, by the way. I know with the thought of visi-coolers, they are the two companies that would eventually come to anybody's mind, but they are not those. So this is one of the big CPG manufacturer clients who's investing big time in visi-coolers across the neighborhood kirana stores that you would probably be shopping at one point in time. I know with big baskets and grofers coming in, that's kind of dated. But still, if you happen to visit these kirana stores, you would see a huge investment by these CPG manufacturers in the form of visi-coolers. He had apart from the few overlapping problems that he had from the previous case study, there was one interesting problem that he had, which is the location change. Imagine, and in a country like India, it is not something very unbelievable kind of a story. Imagine his 10% of visi-coolers were stolen every year. For a company who's making such huge investments in the form of assets being installed at a retailer, if 10% of them get stolen, not just its direct impact on your P&L, but imagine the effort and the time inefficiency that will incur there with the salesperson installing a new visi-cooler, operationalizing it, and so on and so forth. So theft of the visi-cooler was one problem. Foreign brands. I'm sure all of you would have seen Nandini Milks in PepsiCo coolers, right? You would, if you go through any of the Bengaluru kirana stores, you would, I would bet if you could give me a visi-cooler which would be 100% pure in terms of stocking only that brand products, that would not happen. So impurity of the visi-cooler was another problem that this company had. Promotion, of course, and health again. So interestingly, this company was into a kind of products, not drinks like I already clarified, which required its product to be stored at a particular temperature. Beyond that, if the temperature goes up the threshold limit, the products would get waste. The customers would not buy that. So hence leading to lot of wastage of the product. So while the wastage is still a problem here, but it is different in the sense what it was in the previous use case. So these are the four problems that we had. Again, the fundamental remains the same. Use of IoT, installing of sensors and tags on the visi-cooler, which gave us data across four basic parameters. One is the number of times the door is opening and closing in a day. Every time the door opened and closed, we would capture that data. Second, the intensity of with which the light gets switched on when they open the door. Why it is important? When a shopper is in a store in a typical Indian retail scenario, it is very important for a manufacturer for its light to switch on when the door opens because it captures the attention of the shopkeeper. Hence, the intensity of the light was another parameter that we started capturing. We also had got the planogram from the company, which gave us the idea as to how he or she would like his brands to look like in a visi-cooler. So what we did is we got image data being captured from this vesicular every time the door was opened, because whenever the door is opened, either retailer is taking out a product or putting back the product. So when we know that every time the the picture gets clicked, we would compare it to the planogram that was shared with us, with the company, and hence with the help of image analytics, we could tell them if there were any foreign projects or not. Again, very quickly, to just to sum up, their thefts, the vesicular thefts were dropped by 80%, and I tell you they were actually 100%. Why we still reported at 80% is because 20% of the vesiculars had actually been kind of expired, or they were no longer functional. So honestly speaking, their theft was reduced by 100%, because the moment your vesicular is moved from the location, a trigger and an alert would go to a sales representative that your vesicular has changed location. So that's how we could manage to control it. Quality analytics in terms of the temperature, out of stock and promotions, like I said, pretty much like the previous case studies, what we additionally captured them, because when we do image analytics, we could tell them if there are any foreign products or not in this. So that I just kind of sum up my 2 case studies that I had. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Now, I would assume that here, probably it's a small device, but then operationalizing it across all the stores, or even for that matter, across all the kegs, whether that device is working or not working, what kind of operational efficiency would...
May I know your good name, please? Vaibhav. Vaibhav, I tell you, IoT being expensive and operationalizing it being difficult is a pure myth. It's a complete myth. I tell you, it is much, much cheaper than actually getting a data scientist hired in your company. It's that cheaper. The reason I like your question that it still hasn't, if it is not expensive, if it is driving so much impact, why it has still not seen the disruption that it should have. Believe me, your time is not far away when you're going to see that disruption. Any particular invention that is path breaking would take its time for adoption, because people would not believe it that such a simple technology could actually bring in such a huge impact. So it is just a psychological barrier, and time is not far when we will have that disruption coming in with IoT adoption.
How about maintaining it?
Sorry?
How about maintaining the sensors typically in the liquid flow environment or an environment which is...
So I'll give you the example of the vesicular sensor that we had. The lifetime of that sensor is about 3 years. So operational wise, it's absolutely flawless, simple to operate, maintain, data comes in real time.
Did you have the Amazon set up operationally where when the data was received in real time, somebody was there to do some action on it, or there was a trigger, like a mail and an alert to send, right?
Yeah.
Somebody was there to action on it. Because the action is what...
Absolutely. And that's what I said, that from both the two use case studies, while we did a lot of analytics on it, but that was post facto. The biggest value that we drove for our client was with the real-time alerts and notifications that we could supply using this data. So for example, in the second use case study of the vesiculars, every time the vesicular was moved from a location, because typically in some of the small vesiculars in small retailers, they would put it when they're in front of the shop in the morning, and they would put it back when they close the shop, right? So those, every time that movement of the vesicular happened, from our cloud, the message and the alert would go to that sales representative who's tagged along that vesicular, who's responsible for that vesicular in that store, and he would call up the retailer, hi, I got a notification, is there something that's wrong with the vesicular that I want to understand? So that's the biggest aha moment is what I've seen with the clients when they've used sensors. Of course, the post facto analysis that you do with the 1 month data or a 1 week data that you've collected is of course adding a lot of valuable insights to it, but the biggest problem that gets solved is with the alerts and the notification, and they do take a lot of actions with those.
There's more on the device actually. So let's you install that in the keg, right? The device. What exactly? How does that device function, or what is that device?
So there are different types, different levels of tags or sensors that we have at our end. Right from the basic version, okay, I'll give you a very honest answer to that. Genpact does not deal, it's not a technology company, it's not a hardware company. So we obviously partner with third-party vendors who help us get these, they buy it for us and then they install it. We do the analytics on the data that we get through that, okay? So when we deal with this vendor, he has a plethora of options from the most basic version of the hardware to the most advanced one. In the basic versions, you would capture some basic KPIs like a temperature, like a number of door open close times, the accelerometer data, which is that if the cooler has moved or not, and light intensity. That's the most basic version of the tag, and it's a small sensor actually, which can actually be installed and nobody else would even realize that there is a sensor that's been installed. It ranges up to the most advanced one, which will capture images, the vibrations, and whatnot things that you would want it to capture.